Sorry for the little technical delay. Welcome everybody. Today is our session 2. And thank you again for coming here and supporting, the mission of Mawrid to spread the understanding of Islam as we understand it, based on Quran and Sunnah. And we're lucky we have Dr. Khalid Zaheer here with us for next 4 months. So we'll try to take as much advantage of his presence as possible. So we learned a few lessons from last session, and we're going to make some changes to make it as efficient as possible. Especially the question answer session, we want to accommodate online audience, as well as we want to encourage more questions from the sister side. We had, in the world we have 50% ratio of boys and girls, but the question ratio was about 70 to 30%. We want to balance it out. So what we're going to be doing is, after 30 minutes of lecture, we'll have 30 minutes question answer session, and again 30 minutes of lecture and 30 minutes question answer session. So we're going to be distributing, while Dr. Saab starts talking, notepads and pencils. So you can write your question in either Chinese, German, English, and Urdu. We don't understand Greek and Latin. Sorry about that. And you can be as precise as possible, and then questions can come to us. And for online audience, please, you can write the questions in chat in private, meaning just send it to the organizer, and I'm going to note it down and present it to Dr. Saab. Another important thing, try to, the mosque announcement, try to mute your cell phones if possible. They'll keep the flow of the lecture. And the last point, the car number plate ACW, just joking. The last point, because we have only 2 hours, out of which I took 5 minutes, so sorry about that. And we want to make the most out of Dr. Saab's lecture. So last session we had to really take a 5 minutes break so that you can be motivated towards the refreshment. But this time, sorry, we're not taking any break. So you can feel free anytime, just sneak out. We have tea and refreshments, and help yourself with that. And online audience, we can show you what we have so that you can enjoy the same on your side. Okay, so I'll let Dr. Saab start the lecture. Thank you so much.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We begin in the name of the God whose mercy is profound, whose kindness is forever. In our last session, what we concluded was, hopefully, that God's message that has been delivered to the mankind through his chosen representatives called Anbiya and Rusul from time to time, that message is what is described in the Quran as Deen. The message which we now have with us as God's Deen, his religion, is what has been given the name of Islam. The last of the messengers, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, God's mercy be on him, the manner he has given the message to us is expressed in the Quran and Sunnah. Both sources authentic, completely reliable. And the two sources have then also been explained in Hadith, which is a supporting source, which has to be seen in the light of the Quran and Sunnah. The ultimate objective that is sought to be achieved through the message of God is what we talked about, is tazkiyah, which is purification and progress. Purification of the soul. We have a tremendous potential to be morally good, upright humans, and we have a tremendous potential and opportunity in this world to come close to God, even though we can't see him. In other words, of making spiritual progress. However, this process is hampered, threatened by some weaknesses, constraints that we have within our souls. Our desires, we are tempted towards the attractions of this world, some of which are base and undesirable, and our ego, and other problems. God's religion seeks to purify us and enable us to remove those contaminations, obstacles on the one hand, and be able to come close to God and become good humans, upright, morally upright individuals on the other. And the Quran is absolutely clear about the fact that it is those who have got their tazkiyah done properly who will be declared eligible to enter the paradise. Having done that, we now move on to an important question. Is the religion of God that has been given to us, is it to be understood through our intellect? Does our ability to think, reflect, question, critically examine, does it have to do anything to do with religion? Or is it something else that we should look for to understand what God's religion is and to understand more and more? Well, if you want a quick answer, the answer is loud and clear, yes. It is your intellect that you need to employ, use properly in order for you to understand God's religion and in order to make progress in it. However, there are many Muslims, well-meaning, good Muslims, who think completely the otherwise. They believe that intellect has little to do with religion. In some cases, they believe that intellect is actually something that should better not be employed. It is negative. It probably is not going to help you in coming close to God. If anything, it's going to draw you away from Him, and so on. Now, because it's so important that we be absolutely clear about this question, I would like this question to be discussed in the session today. Let's start with the arguments of those people who believe that we should not use our intellect for the purpose of understanding religion. Had their arguments be just intellectual arguments, it would really have been funny, because you are trying to prove that intellect is not to be used by using your intellect. But what they're doing is that they're actually making use of and presenting what I call religious textual arguments. So each of those arguments, well, some of the more important arguments have to be looked at and understood properly as to whether those arguments do actually lead us to believe that we are not expected to use our intellect, or is it that those arguments have been misunderstood. So the arguments, some of them, the important ones, I have mentioned on the board before you, right? The first argument, not necessarily in any logical sequence, the first argument is that believers are expected to have a blind faith. You try to ask me, prove God? Sorry, that's not my business. I believe in Him blindly. Hereafter? Sorry. Prophets? I believe in them because my elders believed in them, because it's a blind faith. So, and the argument that they present is that the Quran says that God-fearing, God-conscious humans, individuals, are those who yu'minuna bil ghayb. And sometimes, I'm not saying it's an argument which is presented by everybody, sometimes it is considered to be one important reason why we should consider intellect to have nothing to do with religion, that the Quran says that you've got to believe bil ghayb. You believe in the unseen, you believe without reason, you believe because you're supposed to believe, and that's it. The other argument which is sometimes presented is that the Quran mentions, and we are required not to ask questions. Take what has been given to you, and that's about it. A third argument that is presented very strongly to prove that we are not expected to use intellect in religion is that the Quran mentions time and again that a good believer is the one whose attitude is that they say Sami'na wa atana. We listen and we obey. So all that you need to do as a good believer is to behave like, let's say, a good army man, military person who just receives orders and obliges. That's about it. You listen and you obey. And had there been any role of intellect in the process of understanding and following religion, then God Almighty should have said that good believers are those who say, we listen, we understand, and then we obey. The complete absence of the possibility of understanding is what leads us to believe that you just have to do what is required of you. There is no role of intellect, therefore, in religion. Another argument which at times is presented is that it is claimed that the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, when he came across the fact that there were some people who were talking about the question of predestination, taqdeer, he got upset and he required believers who were indulged in that discussion to not talk about it, or else they might be in danger of losing their faith. So if that is the case, is it not absolutely clear that your intellect is not good enough, and therefore do not put it into unnecessary trouble in trying to understand religion through it? It's not good enough. Another argument which at times is presented is that a companion of the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, as knowledgeable as Ali radiallahu anhu, may God be pleased with him, is reported to have said that religion is not based on intellect. Had it been based on intellect, then we would have not rubbed our socks from above when we are availing the concession of rubbing our socks for purpose of ablution. Because your feet, your socks get defiled from beneath, under your feet, and that's the place where you should have been asked to rub. But when the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, taught us to rub the socks from above, it's an indication of the fact that you just have to obey. You don't have to think. You don't have to reflect. So, there are many well-meaning Muslims, therefore, who have this confident understanding that you are not supposed to use your intellect while understanding God's message. And what then are you supposed to be doing? Well, just listen to the scholars, pick some of them, pick one of them, or maybe a group of them, and just learn what God's religion says, and just follow it. That's what the spirit is. Now, because I very strongly believe that the reality is completely the otherwise, therefore I am in this session presenting call them counter arguments. The first argument that the Almighty is saying that you're supposed to have blind faith is an incorrect understanding and translation of the verse Allazina yu'minuna bil ghaib. The verse actually means that God-conscious people are the ones who believe in the unseen realities, who believe in the fact that what you call a reality, what you call a truth, is the one which you not only at times observe through your senses. There are certain realities which are to be acknowledged through your logical arguments. When you believe in it, when you acknowledge it, well, you are actually confirming the fact that your intellect has an important role to play. God presents the case of belief in God, the belief in life hereafter, the belief in divine revelation through arguments. And therefore, this understanding that belief in the unseen is actually a reason for us to understand that we have to believe without reason. It's completely the opposite. The fact of the matter is that we know that realities are divided into two categories: those that can be seen and some of those that cannot be seen. And the ones that cannot be seen can only be understood through our intellectual reasoning. And that is exactly what the Quran keeps inviting us to do. The Quran is asking us not to ask questions. Well, that's not the case. The verse that has been that is normally presented for the purpose from Surah Al-Ma'idah, if read completely in full, is actually asking believers not to ask questions when the Quran is getting revealed in matters where asking questions is silly. You don't need to ask questions. The reason is that when God is revealing His law, the Sharia, He knows what He ought to reveal. He knows our needs. He knows our limitations. He wants religion to be easy to follow. He wants it to be simple. And therefore, when He is revealing His law, don't start asking questions, because in case if you are going to ask questions, God is going to respond to them. And that response in turn is going to become a part of the Sharia, which God didn't want to happen. So He required believers to not ask questions at the time when the law was getting revealed. We have an example in the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah in verses 67 to 71, where the Almighty mentions the case of a group of people amongst the children of Israel who were asked to slaughter a cow, and they started asking questions. Silly, irrelevant, unrelated questions. A cow is a cow. A cow is not a camel. And, all they needed to do was to get hold of a cow and slaughter it. But because they started asking questions as to what kind of cow should it be, the Almighty started responding to those questions. That's how His policy is. If you start kidding, making fun of what He's doing by asking questions knowingly, deliberately, silly questions, you would start responding, and He'll make your life difficult because your intention is not good. So it is these kind of questions that were desired not to be asked at the time when the Quran was getting revealed. Not the questions which are well-meaning, intelligent, which are meant to clarify certain points relevant to the Sharia. I mean, you read Surah Al-Baqarah alone, and you'll find that there are a number of questions starting from verse 215, there are 217, 219, 220, 222, wherein the Almighty mentions, يَسْأَلُونَكَ مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ, and so on. They ask you about how much to spend. They are asking you about the sacred months. They are asking you about Khamr and Maisir, intoxicating drinks and gambling. And God Almighty, after mentioning their questions, answers them. So how is it possible that He would discourage people from asking questions if He Himself is mentioning some of those questions and then He goes ahead to answer them? So that point also doesn't seem to be making sense. The fact that we are expected to listen and obey is quite understandable. I mean, if you believe in an individual to be God's messenger, representative, who is receiving His revelation from Him, obviously if I was to be there present during the times when He was there, the only thing an intelligent, well-meaning person would do is to just listen to Him and follow Him. I mean, that is precisely what your faith means. You have accepted the messenger of God, may God's mercy be on him, as His messenger, representative. He receives His instructions. So when He tells you that, look here, this is what you're supposed to do, should I ask questions? Why? Because I've already chosen him. I've already accepted him as God's representative. That is one thing. But it is quite another that somebody tells you that this is what your messenger has said. And I just accept it without asking, without critically examining, without feeling good, confident through my intellectual reasoning and critical examination as to whether he actually said that or not. Could he have said that? Is it really possible? So, the context in which the verses that says Samena Atana were revealed was the one where there were some hypocrites who used to bring in excuses to not follow the messenger. And they were the ones who were asked to make sure that once they have accepted the messenger of God as God's representative, the right attitude is to listen to what he's saying and to follow him. It is not a negation of the use of intellect. It is a negation of base desires that come in the way of following God's instructions when they are coming to us clearly and without any doubt. As far as the question of predestination is concerned, it's a complicated issue, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. And if there are any problems that would still remain, we'll talk more about it. It has basically got to do with God's attributes. We've been informed that God can only be understood and appreciated in this present worldly life of ours, and more about it inshallah in the next session. But we know about him only through his attributes, sifat. We cannot see God. All of God's attributes are perfect. His attribute of knowledge is perfect, and his attribute of justice is perfect. You try to work out a balance between the two, and you would know what predestination is. What it is actually is that on the one hand, what we do, most of the things that we do in life for which we are accountable, we are doing them freely. I'm not being pushed to speak what I'm speaking. Hopefully you're not forced to come to this lecture. It all happens because we are employing our own judgment, our own freedom to make choices. That is one thing. However, it's quite another that God knows about it. And he knows that people are doing things in this life on their own volition, freely. The two are not contradictory. The two are simultaneously happening, are possible, but this is something which is beyond our imagination. So therefore the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, he cautioned that, look here, don't try to fathom, absorb, try to comprehend completely and fully what is beyond your understanding. It's not incorrect, it's beyond us. And therefore the Prophet of God, may God's mercy be on him, he cautioned people that, look here, while you understand what it is, you cannot fully and completely comprehend it. So it's not a negation of intellect, it is in actual fact a mention of the boundaries of intellect. Like our eyes can see many things, but we do caution our kids that, look, don't try to stare at the sun when it's shining. You know, you might actually do it at the expense of your sight. It's not a negation of your ability to see. It's just a precautionary measure to make sure that the ability that you have doesn't get spoiled. Likewise, your intellect, it's brilliant, but it has its own limitations. So better not use it in areas where using it is useless. It's not going to help. Finally, rubbing of socks from above, honestly, it's symbolic. It has got nothing to do with cleaning your socks. It is a concession that has been allowed by the Almighty in case when we are traveling or we are in a difficult situation wherein we want to put on socks, it's cold, and we want to avail the facility of rubbing them instead of washing feet. They know that it's symbolic. Like we know that if we don't have water, then we do tayammum. Now, tayammum is not actually cleaning yourself. It's just a reminder. It's symbolic. So, who says that while we are doing tayammum, we are cleaning our face or we are cleaning our hands? Likewise, in the case of rubbing your socks, what you're doing is symbolically doing an exercise instead of washing your feet to remind yourself that as and when your socks are going to be off, you will wash your feet. It is very difficult to imagine that as wise and intelligent a person as Ali radiallahu anhu could have said that. We at times accept information as having emerged from a source without using our intellect, without bothering to understand as to whether it could have emerged from him or not. Looking at it positively, I'm taking 5 more minutes. Looking at it positively, what you find in the Quran is that the Quran emphasizes the use of intellect over and over again. I mean, there are more than 50 different passages in the Quran where God is emphasizing the fact that you must use your intellect. What's going on? Why are you not using your intellect? There are 2 passages in the Quran which urge the reader to reflect and ponder. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Do they not ponder and reflect upon the Quran, its verses? وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ. Had it been from anyone other than God, لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. They would have found in it a lot of discrepancy. How would you find that there are no discrepancies, no contradictions, conflicts in the Quran? By doing tadabbur, reflecting upon its verses. We find a very interesting passage in the Quran wherein God informs us that when He declared His grand plan that He is going to create man before angels, angels were expected to be very obedient to God. In fact, they are the ones who implement God's will. Angels asked some serious questions. They asked God, is He creating a creation who is going to cause mischief on earth and is going to shed the blood of each other? Pretty serious question. God was not upset. He didn't say, how dare you ask that question. In fact, He answered those questions, and He answered to their satisfaction. That in itself is an indication that, if you want to do something to achieve a purpose, you ought to first understand what that purpose is. You want to understand why has it been required, and therefore you ask questions and you make yourself clear. There is a verse in the Quran which says, in the eyes of God, the worst kind of beasts, worse than beasts, are those humans who are deaf, dumb and blind. فَهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. They don't use their intellect. So what we find in the Quran is an overwhelming emphasis on the fact that we ought to use our intellect. And that is the reason, that is the way that we have for us to be able to find out that the Quran is God's message, that God indeed is there running the show affairs of this world. He is one and the only, that there is going to be a life hereafter, and that the message of God, the Quran, is indeed His message. All these realities, all these beliefs are to be accepted and acknowledged according to the Quran on the basis of our use of intellect, our reasoning, understanding. So the understanding of those people who believe that God's religion has got nothing to do with intellect is not based on God's message, and therefore it's something which really needs to be understood, and we ought to make as best possible use of our intellect as we can to be able to know what God is mentioning in His message and what exactly are we expected to do.
Okay, so as you know the format, we do half an hour lecture followed by half an hour question answer session to keep it interactive. And let's see if you have any questions. You can, I've already distributed the notepad, so somebody can help me collect if we have more than one, or it's only one I can pass it over to Dr. Saab. And for online audience, I've already requested you, if you have any questions, just send it to me directly using the chat box, and I'm going to write it down for Dr. Saab, and I'm going to present him. I know I made a very enthusiastic announcement about the refreshment, but we still have to, organize it for you. So it's going to take like 5 minutes. We're going to just organize some few things for you, so that, and then we're going to show you how you can, help yourself by, becoming an example for you. So just a reminder, we have a daycare facility available. If you haven't, don't know already about that, so you can utilize this. All right, so I'm going to come and collect questions. I think we'll follow the procedure. That'll be best. So I think they're writing down the questions. Let me. You can, if you need the notepad, I can. Okay, we can share it.
Write the question, or we can just ask it to everybody else.
Like today, we decided that we're gonna be writing the questions down to make it a little, more organized, and so let's follow this procedure for today, and we're gonna rediscuss it if you have a feedback, and we can rediscuss the procedure for next time. Okay.
What I understand from this question is that if religion is based on intellect, then what about the idea that other generations will get punished for your sins? I'm trying to figure out where it has been mentioned. We do know that the children of Israel have been addressed in the Quran, wherein they have been informed that their ancestors committed certain crimes, and the mention of the Quran is such that it creates an impression as if the people who were the addressees, they are also being accused of the same crimes. Honestly, the Quran is absolutely clear that humans are going to be held accountable only for what they do themselves. لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. Man is not going to get the reward of anything except what he does. And لَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى. No soul is going to shoulder the burden of anybody else's sins. So the principle is absolutely clear. God Almighty tells us that on the day of judgment, the accountability is going to be based on pure merit. What you have done yourself is what you are accountable for. What you haven't done and you're not responsible for, be absolutely sure that you will not be accused of doing it. I mean, if somebody is born to a family where what is happening is not particularly good, it's all evil, the individual, according to the Quran, is going to be given concession for the bad atmosphere that he was made a part of as a trial for him. The Quran is clear that the principle, La nukallifu nafsan illa wus'aha, we shall not make any soul